green. Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go!
And a good Wednesday morning, Birds fans. Thanks for jumping in here on Birds 365. You got Mac and Mac, John McMullen and Jody McDonald. We got 2 hours of Eagles opinion and information to share with you. Stay right where you're at. Johnny Mac, it's funny. I got a show sheet of stuff that we got to cover today. I write down all my notes. I'm ready to go and pepper you with questions. And then I changed my mind at the very last second.
That's me, man. I go off on tangents.
Here's where I'm going with that. We appreciate everybody who jumps on our stream every single day. We already got 70 some of you in today. Thank you for checking in. And people comment on the show in our little stream column here. And I know some of the other shows here on JAKIB use the stream more, respond to the stream more, take notes of the stream more. Is one of the reasons why I don't is because you guys seem to entertain yourselves. You don't need McMullen and McDonald along for the ride. You go back and forth between each other and troll and everything else. And more power to you. Just sometimes it's very entertaining to read while doing the show, as a matter of fact. But our second stream of the day from Twitsajiga, who is a oftentimes streamer, says, "What time is this pointless presser?" That's one of the problems with taking information, expanding with the stream. I don't know if he's being ironic or sarcastic, or if he's actually trying to state a point that today is a pointless press conference. I don't believe that for a millisecond. I kind of think it's a rather important press conference, and it's shown by the fact I don't know what he means. The best way to communicate is face to face. Now, I'm guilty as hell. I text a lot. I send out about 40 texts every one telephone call I make these days. It's just easier. And if it's going to be long and drawn out and important, you probably should hit the call button and talk to somebody, because you can't always pick up on sarcasm and the like. I don't know if he means it or not, Johnny Mac, but how important is today's press conference?
What are we talking in an existential sense? None of it's important from that
every
standpoint.
sense.
And
Existential, reality, hyperbolic, however you want to take it.
If you care about the Philadelphia Eagles, it's important. Yeah, that's all I'll say.
If you're watching Birds 365, we're starting with the assumption you care about the Philadelphia Eagles. If you're tuned to this show at 8 o'clock in the morning, you care about the Eagles.
If you're worried about bigger things in life and society, it's probably pretty meaningless. But so is all of professional sports.
Right.
So everything's
John
on the
McMullen and
scale.
Jody McDonald. Thank you very much.
Exactly. I mean, let's be honest. We're not saving lives here, but if you care about the Philadelphia Eagles, and presumably you do if you're watching this show, it's very important. It's very important to try to get a feel. Now, I think what he's trying to say is we're not going to get honest answers on the record, and that's probably true. But you can, and there'll be some good reporters there, and they'll be able to call some things by the way they ask the questions. So you'll be able to get some information if you want it. If you go in with that mindset of, oh, it doesn't mean anything. I mean, it doesn't mean we're talking about offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators. I saw a mind-blowing stat yesterday to the point I had to look at it. I go, this can't be true. There's not an offensive coordinator in this league in place from 2022 backward. It starts at 2022. Now, Dave Ragone, I think in Atlanta, is still technically employed, but they fired Arthur Smith, so he's gone. Not one, Jody. Not one. That it's unbelievable. So, when we talk about the next offensive coordinator, whoever it's going to be, Cliff Kingsbury, the latest to interview, not going to be here long. One of two things are going to happen. He's either going to be really good and he gets another head coaching job, or he's going to be Brian Johnson and the people are going to crap on him out the door. So, that's the league as a whole, not just the Philadelphia Eagles.
Right. I
always talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they're the definition of continuity, and they are from a head coaching standpoint. 3 coaches since 1968. Let me repeat that. 1968. They fired their offensive coordinator in season.
Right.
Yeah. So from that point, is it pointless? Probably a little bit. Who the next offensive coordinator is going to be. But, I think depends on the way you look at it.
Let me add to your conversation from a pointless point of view, because I've gotten some of that. We've gotten some of it here on our stream, and I've gotten calls on WIP and heard other calls. The mindset that, well, you might not want to hire a guy because if he comes in and he's good, he's just going to get a head coaching job somewhere else. So you should think twice before you hire a guy. Hello? What do you want to hire? A stiff? Hey, at least he's not going anywhere. We can keep him and let him be bad as long as we want. That's an ass backwards way of looking at things, ladies and gentlemen. You don't want to go there. Howie Roseman and Jeff Lurie, and they'll try and sell us on Nick Sirianni being involved, which I won't buy. I guess we're back to is this a pointless thing that the Eagles are going to meet with the media today? It's going to be a higher executive hire with their new offensive and defensive coordinator. They should have one job there. Get the best guy for the job for 2024. Don't worry about, we could lose him, or run in fear of, if he's bad, there's all this turnover. Did you hear the stat McMullen gave? No offensive coordinator left in the league from 2021. That's the gig. That's what it is in the NFL these days. Just accept it and deal with it and go out and pick the best guy for the job for the upcoming season. If Nick Sirianni's back, which we all assume he is, it's an all-in year next year. They're going for the Super Bowl again. You might think at this stage they're not as much of a favorite to get there as they were leading into this season. They won't be next year, but you still have to plan your offseason accordingly. You want to go to the Super Bowl again next year. We're not building anything. This is not a taking it in steps process where the Eagles are at. Get the best guy for the job next year, and don't let anything else factor into your decision. Do you think Howie Roseman and Jeff Lurie are going down that road?
In their mind, yeah, sure. And that's the issues I think we're going to be talking about in the upcoming weeks and months and even into next season. Yeah, certainly from their standpoint. I mean, they're trying to get the best person possible for the job. To me, the bigger question is, are they going about it the right way? And I would argue the answer to that is no. Also doesn't mean it can't be successful. I would say, the Eagles preach, make good decisions, stack good decisions. Doesn't mean you're always going to get good results, but the more good decisions you make, the more good results you'll get over a long period of time. They could make a bad decision and get a good result.
Sure.
So from their standpoint, they're trying to go about it. the right way. And I'm talking about Howie and Jeffrey. Are they going about it the right way? Yeah, I would argue they're not, for the reason that, and I was looking for this quote, and I give our buddy Zach Berman credit, very organized guy, so he found it. So, and he put it on Twitter, so I want to give him credit. But this is what Nick Sirianni said on his offense to us in the summer of 2022. No matter if you're Kevin Patullo, and by the way, first name, make note of that, Kevin Patullo. No matter if you're Kevin Patullo is calling it, Shane Steichen's calling it, Brian Johnson is calling it, Jeff Stoutland's calling it, Jason Michael's calling it, Jonathan Gannon comes over and calls it, Howie calls it from up there, and Jeffrey Lurie, Dom, security chief, Dom DeSandro, Julian, Lurie. I'm very particular, and I know what I believe in the passing and running game in offensive football. Consistently. This has been consistent since the day he got here. I can't tell you how many times he has told us this. This is his offense, no matter who it's going to be. And he said it last year, and he said it December 20th. He said the same thing on the record. Late last season, when people were criticizing Brian Johnson, he defended Brian Johnson. Same. My offense. He has said it consistently. Now what the Eagles are doing is taking that away from Nick Sirianni. So again, I say, if they're doing that, why is he here?
Right.
So I don't think they're going about it the right way. But to answer your question specifically, of course, they think they're trying to get the best guy for the job.
And here's why, I've been a let's keep Sirianni guy more than let's let Sirianni go. But the way you laid it out is absolutely on point. The thing that I think they hired Nick for to begin with, back when they decided to move on from Doug Peterson, was his offensive philosophy and system and the way that he handled offense. And if you're going to strip him of that, and basically when the first guy you interview is Cliff Kingsbury, who is a completely different kind of an offensive guy with a different game plan, a different way to attack, it kind of lifts the lid off what you're trying to do here. Yeah, you're saying it's not going to be serious. No matter how vigorous he was in describing the offense as his offense, you're telling him it's not his offense anymore. So, yeah, why is he here? There's got to be another reason. His motivational skills, his organizational skills. It's not for his defensive knowledge. We know that. The defense is going to be run by whoever they bring in to run the defense. So, yeah, why is he here? They just like him. He is malleable and let him do whatever the hell they want.
There's a good word, Jody, malleable. He is agreeable to do what the owner and the general manager want him to do. There's not all coaches. People talk about Bill Belichick. You can't have Bill Belichick if that's your mindset. You can't even have Mike Vrabel if that's your mindset. You can't have certain coaches if that's your mindset. And if that's your mindset, and Nick agrees to it, and I'm a little surprised he agreed to it, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe behind the scenes, maybe he said, you know what, we did stagnate. We have to evolve. Maybe I need to get, it's not like he can't change his mind, but he's been pretty consistent. It certainly looks from the outside looking in like he's being dictated to. I mean, I don't see how you look at it any other way. He's being dictated to. And for all the talk, and I said it pretty early when people are throwing out the big names, throw Jim Harbaugh out there as well. I'm like, are you kidding me? There's no bringing in those guys if this is the way you want to run your organization. That's not to say you can't run it successfully. They've been very successful compared to most of the rest of the league. So it's not even necessarily saying it's the wrong way to do it, but stop talking about Belichick and Harbaugh. I mean, it's a waste of time.
Here's the only reason why you can talk about Belichick and Harbaugh. Is it likely? No. Very small percent chance that it could happen. Jeff did it once before. Chip Kelly came in. Chip Kelly wowed some people, including Jeffrey Lurie, And he said, Howie, guess what? We're moving you to the other side of the building. Feel free to take a world tour on how to be a better executive and general manager because, yeah, Chip's going to run the show for a period of time. Little do we know it's going to be a very short period of time. And Chip was going to self-destruct. But he did do it once. Now, Howie Roseman had not won the Super Bowl when he did it last time. Now Howie's got that pelt on the wall. It's going to be a lot more difficult for Jeffrey to go, yeah, Howie, I'm going to need you to step out of the picture, Howie. Just step aside here for a second. He has done it, so you can't say there's zero chance.
Well, it's
just
been
a really small chance.
He's been the owner he has done it. You're right, but he's been the owner for almost 30 years. We're at almost 3 decades. So that's a pretty large sample size. He called his greatest mistake giving Chip Kelly that power. So, could he do it again? Everybody's a human being. I say it all the time. He called it his biggest mistake in 30 years. So play the odds. You're a betting guy. Play the odds.
Yeah. Substantial favorite that he's not going down that road again.
Yeah. So that's why I say that people going down the Belichick and Harbaugh routes. Yeah. You're barking up the wrong tree.
I would tend to agree. But last thing, and then we'll set up for our first guests. If you're a regular streamer here on Birds 365, Wednesday mornings, more likely than not, Mike Gill is going to join us. It is very likely that that's going to be the case within the next 5 minutes. Cliff Kingsbury, let's see what was the first thing. Here's how I'll ask it to you. What was the first thing that popped into your mind when you heard the Eagles are planning on meeting with and interviewing Cliff Kingsbury for their offensive coordinator?
Lincoln Riley.
Exactly
Lincoln
right.
Riley.
That's exact. See, you and I do this show together, so we many a thing we think right along the same line. This is a Howie move if ever there was one.
Yeah.
Do you really think Nick Sirianni goes, hey, that Cliff Kingsbury is only an assistant. He's only a consultant for USC. He is a pretty smart, innovative offensive guy. We could talk to him if we're going to move off Brent. You really think that the coach went there? No. This was Howie on the phone with his boy Lincoln Riley, and Lincoln going, I've got Cliff Kingsbury on my staff, and we don't have a spot, but he is a genius offensive guy. Yeah, this is Howie 110%.
Oh, yeah. The first call, I think a lot of people don't remember. The first call Howie Roseman made to a candidate in quotation, after the team moved on from Doug Peterson was Lincoln Riley. He loves him. And then you add in the fact of, he got the most out of Jalen Hurts at the college level. And now you have the Lincoln Riley speaking up for you and saying, probably this is a bright off. Yeah. This has got Lincoln Riley tint all over it.
Oh yeah. Which means it's a Howie hire, which means we know where they're going. They'll deny it to that. You thoroughly expect when you guys get in there and they start fielding questions that the hiring are going to be collaborative efforts, right? It's going to be.
Oh yeah. Collaborative this, collaborative that. And, he'll be in the room, Nick Sirianni. But yeah, and that's part of and I wrote about that on SI earlier this week. They changed the shift from Chip Kelly to post Chip Kelly. And at the time, Jeffrey Lurie's tortured explanation about Chip Kelly giving him I had to give him that power to see if he could be accountable. It just made no sense. It was the most illogical. It was sort of like the ownership version of Nick Sirianni explaining the play in Seattle. That's what it was. It was so nonsensical. The pass interference. We're trying to draw a pass. That was the ownership version. It was so nonsense. Oh, I had to do it to see if he could. It just made no sense. So that's, the collaboration. And again, you see it with Brian Johnson. Who's responsible, Jody? Who's responsible? Is it Nick Sirianni? Is it Brian Johnson? Is it Jalen Hurts? You got the Spider-Man meme where they point at each other, the Bizarro Spider-Man. Everybody points at each other. So collaboration can be great when things are going well.
Right.
When things are not going well, then everybody's pointing fingers behind the scenes. Oh, I'm painting inside the lines. oh, I can't do what I want to do from the Brian Johnson side. From the Nick Sirianni side, you know, he's honest that he says it's his offense, but, you know, people are, you know, saying essentially what the Eagles are telling you is, well, it's not Nick's fault because they were good with Shane Steichen. It's Brian's fault because the only difference is Shane Steichen to Brian Johnson. So it becomes Brian Johnson's fault, and nobody wants to point the finger at the quarterback, although more people should be pointing the finger at the quarterback as well.
And, oh, by the way, something you just said, Nick's honest. Except when he isn't, except when he tells you guys, "Oh no, we're not making any changes."
Honest about that.
About that, yes. But see, that's part of the problem. I don't know if I can trust Nick anymore. He had been pretty damn honest his first couple of years here. When the spit hit the fan this year, Nick decided I got to get in line with everybody else, and when in doubt, I got to lie for the best of me and the team, and I got to pull the wool over the Eagles fans' eyes, and the players know he's doing it. Certainly, they knew with the whole side thing that he was being pushed into the luxury box. So, as a motivator, it's a guy who's going to be in control of all these guys. You tell me the truth now, Coach, or are you lying for the sake of the organization?
And there's going to be some lying going on today.
Oh, yeah. I guarantee you that. All right. He is McMullen. I'm McDonald. You got Mac and Mac, Birds 365. We see Mike Gill. He's ready to jump in with us from down the shore. The Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN Radio. Mike Gill, next, Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
They're carving them up and good play calling along the way. First and goal at the 6.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy has a way for you to play alongside your favorite football team all season long with their Fantasy Pick'em game. You pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stats, then do what you usually do on a Sunday, watch the games. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, and the Sports Betting Show wants you to get involved. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. When you sign up, use the promo code WIN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
That is what we dive in deep on every single day. EAGLES. Eagles here on Birds 365. You got McDonald and McMullen to do it, and we are joined by Mike Gill, who's going to do it with us for the next 15, 20 minutes. And today's T-shirt du jour is
Arizona State.
Our party school. We're not going Ivy League. We're going.
I'm thinking of warmer weather, Jody Mack. It's miserable down the shore today, so I am thinking of warmer weather.
By the way, Mike Gill, I forgot to tell Jody this pre-show, so I'll say it on air. Happy birthday to Mike.
No!
Yes, yes.
Happy birthday, Mike Gill. Did not know that.
What better way to start than on Birds 365, your birthday?
Yes. This is a older, wiser version of Mike Gill today.
We'll give you that evaluation coming up in 20 minutes. We know you're older. We'll find out if you're wiser.
Let's find out.
Let's go here. Mike Gill, and I know it's not, it never is, but the perfect birthday. What are you doing today? Out and about, hard work. Appreciate you coming on here on the Birds Sports Bash. When all is said and done and work is done for the day, what Mike Gill doing to celebrate his birthday?
Well, I am working today. I think I've reached the age where I don't take the day off on my birthday.
Nor do I. Yeah, none of us do anymore.
We're going to dinner tonight. I am taking Friday off, and I'm leaving for the weekend. We're going up to the Poconos for the weekend. We got a cabin up that way. So we will be up there for a weekend with a bunch of friends. So I'm taking Friday off, but I will work tonight, going to dinner tonight, and then taking the weekend off. I was looking we were looking all over the place. It's supposed to rain everywhere. So we weren't we were going to go to Nashville for the weekend or New Orleans or something. Rain everywhere. So we just decided to go up to the cabin.
Nice. Okay. You're
good
living a life, by the way. You get to hang out down the shore, then you go to a vacation up the Poconos. You're always vacation spot to vacation spot.
Maybe
I like to get out of here.
Maybe he is older and wiser. We got to give him credit. He's doing research on where he should and shouldn't go. That's pretty. That
is pretty wise.
Borderline impressive.
I need a wise man to explain this, and I have two wise men here who listen to callers and in your case texters, Mike, and so I want to run this both by you because the latest name Jody and I were talking about, Cliff Kingsbury, as a potential offensive coordinator candidate. Now I see on my social media you got two groups. Well, you know. Lincoln Riley, Cliff Kingsbury, they're together. Lincoln did such a great job with Jalen Hurts at Oklahoma. Great potential hire. The other ones, he's terrible. He couldn't make Patrick Mahomes a quarterback. He was pretty good to the point he was a pretty high pick. Now, Andy Reid helps when you get to the NFL. Why do you guys think there's such conviction and such certainty when it comes to fans talking about coaches? They know about everybody. I don't know. They know.
I always contend why the fans always blame the coach in every sport is because they believe that that's a job that they could perform. They could be the coach. They can't play. They do have an understanding that they are not capable of playing.
Can't be A.J. Brown. Can't be
the game. But I do think deep down, many believe if they had the opportunity to be the GM or the coach, that they could do that job. And because what they were told in fourth grade by Coach Joe, that is drilled into them. And they believe that Coach Joe was the guy who knew more than anybody. And now they know more than everybody. And the coaching thing. Now, with Cliff Kingsbury, I did not like when Arizona hired. I could not believe he got a head coaching NFL job based on what he did at Texas Tech. I could not understand it for the life of me. He did go to Arizona, and I got to say he exceeded early expectations. Like, he had some success. He took them to the playoffs. They had a fun offense. But it almost seemed kind of Chip Kelly-ish, is that he had a lot of successes. People were trying to figure him out. And then when they did, he just didn't have the temperament to deal with NFL. He had no discipline. That place was a disaster when he left. And I just don't want to see a guy come in here who's kind of a one-trick pony and left there pretty much with like, hey, the place was on fire and he didn't do anything to stop it, just no discipline, I would be out on Kingsbury. But that is my assertion as to why people think about they know the coach.
Let me give you a hand from a portion of the Philadelphia Eagle fan base. Because if you're in the run the ball mode as an Eagle fan and think that they don't run it enough and there's not enough down, you don't want to be hiring Mr. Kingsbury, Coach Kingsbury, because he's going to come in here, he's going to throw it, and then he's going to throw it some more. I don't care if the quarterback whisperer, Lincoln Riley, whispered to him, so therefore he could whisper to Jalen. The Eagle crowd that loves balance in their offense is not getting that with Cliff Kingsbury. But what do you think Jeffrey Lurie would say to a hire like that? The guy who believes that the way to a championship is high-level passing attacks. John and I just agreed. This has got Howie Roseman written all over it. You think Jeff Lurie is also well on board with a potential Cliff Kingsbury offense coming to Philadelphia?
That's a good question. This thing always stumps me. Why does anybody care the aesthetics of the win if you win the game? It just doesn't make any sense to me that someone would say, I want this guy because he's not going to run the ball. He's going to win in the fashion, even though this guy might be better and more qualified, he's going to run too much, and therefore I will take the lesser candidate because he wants to do it the way I want to do it. Look, I don't know who has the ties to Kingsbury. These are always the things with the Eagles that you're trying to figure out. Who's making this call? Is this a Sirianni call? Is this a Roseman call? What connection does Cliff Kingsbury have, or a Lurie have to the Eagles organization? And that's what makes this guy's name popping out all the more interesting to this whole story. Is, did Jeff Lurie say, well, we'll pass the ball? That's the guy I want to make a call to. Did Roseman make this call?
This one's easy, Mike. This is a Roseman. This is a Roseman.
I would think it's a Roseman. I would think it's a Roseman. And then what's the connection? Do you have any connecting of the dots?
Lincoln Riley. Howie is very close to Lincoln Riley. Loves Lincoln Riley.
Gotcha. So Lincoln Riley calls Roseman and says, hey, can you do my boy a solid?
It's probably the other way around. Howie, will go to Lincoln Riley for advice. That's the first thing he did when they let go of Doug Peterson. First call he made was, hey, Lincoln, would you consider you want to come to the NFL at some point? I wouldn't be surprised if he's the head coach here at some point, Lincoln Riley. Because with NIL exploding on college, a lot of college coaches, Jody and I were talking about this yesterday, they're fed up with it. You got to recruit kids 4 times now. You got to recruit them every year. And a lot of guys are looking to get out. I don't know where Lincoln Riley is. Certainly coming off a disappointing season. This is probably not the time to do it. But I wouldn't be surprised if he's the head coach here at some point. So that's how close those two are and how much Howie respects Lincoln Riley. So, it's one of the reasons Jalen Hurts is here, to be honest. Lincoln Riley would talk him up. So, to me, this one's an obvious Howie Roseman. Now, is it serious? Is it not serious? We talked about Jim Bob Cooter with Jeff McMullen yesterday. Doesn't look that serious. That's a Nick Sirianni guy. Jim Bob is a Nick Sirianni guy. That's one of my concerns, though, guys. Those guys are getting erased pretty quickly. Tommy Rees, big Nick Sirianni guy, Alabama offensive coordinator. He's back in the league with Cleveland. He's off. Seems like Jim Bob's off. Maybe he'll get an interview, but he's not serious, according to McLean. You can't even consider Kevin Patullo and Jason Michael, who have, Jason's been a former offensive coordinator in this league. Kevin, we all know how close he is with Nick Sirianni, but they have the taint of this coaching staff. You can't go that direction. Mike McCoy, Frank Reich, we don't know where they are. I know Rob Motti mentioned yesterday, Nick has not reached out to Frank yet about the job. It seems like they want to push away. They want to make Nick Sirianni uncomfortable. Is that a good thing?
I brought this up. It was an unpopular opinion on my show, which is it's probably unpopular, but don't the Eagles have the right to do this? People keep questioning the Eagles as if Howie's the guy and Nick's a puppet and Laurie and Roseman do everything. Yeah, because they're one of the most successful organizations in the NFL, whether we like it or not. Super Bowls isn't what defines every team because they know you're not going to win the Super Bowl every year. But if you are one of the best organizations year after year, for 20 years, they have 5 losing seasons. We're going crazy doing backflips about Detroit because they haven't won a playoff game in 30 years. The Eagles consistently have multiple front office people poached from them and multiple coaches poached from them. The Eagles would say, so what? This is the way we do things. And everybody else wants to do what we do. So don't they have the right to run it this way?
Well, they certainly have the right. I mean, they can do whatever they want. The question is that the right way to do it?
Right. And I would say they would say based on the success we've had and the amount of teams that take our executives to run their organizations, I think they do it just about as good, if not better, than everybody else.
And you're right. The track record says that they've accomplished what they've accomplished and should be judged accordingly. All right, Mike, this has kind of surprised me, at least over the last 24, 48 hours, when it became unofficially official. Our very own D-Gun put it out there first, and it was confirmed yesterday by Jeff McMullen that Brian Johnson is not going to be back as Eagles offense coordinator. They held on to him for what they thought was a reasonable amount of time. Didn't want to compromise his chances to get a head coaching job. They were rooting for him to get a head coaching job because then they, as per the Rooney Rule, could have gotten compensatory draft picks with his hiring by another team. But they finally had to throw their hands up and go, listen, we got to start talking to people about replacing him because we're going to replace him.
Kingsbury.
We got to put that. Somebody else got to call Cliff Kingsbury first. We got to do it first. And it's been this tumult, uprising of poor Brian Johnson. And why would they do this to Brian Johnson? And it's not Brian Johnson's fault. And Jeremy Fowler, ESPN, came out yesterday, said really bad vibes on the rest of the staff that Brian Johnson got caught in the middle of the life. I don't get it. I really don't. The Eagles offense went backwards this year. And the only major change they had from the year before when they were one of the best offenses in the NFL was they changed their play caller. If you really believe that Cam Jurgens for the offensive line was a massive drop-off, okay, you're breaking down tape better than I am. But otherwise, it's the same exact offense, and it went backwards. What was the one change? Brian Johnson. So he gets a free pass. He shouldn't be held accountable for what he was doing.
It's an interesting way you look at this, Jody, because as people are upset the way Brian Johnson was handled. Are they essentially saying if Brian's going to be at fault, so too then Nick, because this is his offense? You're saying it's the same offense. Yeah, it's Nick's offense. I don't want to call your offense, Jody. No offense. I don't want you to design something, hand me the book, and say call these plays.
Yeah, but time out, Brian Johnson / Mike Gill. When we gave you the job, you knew the deal.
Sure.
It wasn't like, yeah, Brian, you're going to come in. You're going to sign the offense. You sign the contract. Oh yeah, you're going to be running my offense. All you're going to do is call the play.
Well, and this is where
they laid it out for him. He knew what the gig was when he took it.
Yeah, this is where the convolution of who picks Brian Johnson. Did Howie Roseman say Johnson's the guy? Does Sirianni say, well, I want Patullo? Nope, you're not taking him. You're taking him. Okay, but he's going to run my offense. Brian Johnson, again, gets stuck in the crossfire here of I want the job. I want the title. And then, like everything, like, when you're a coach or a GM and the former number 1 pick gets released because he's flamed out somewhere. He gets another shot because everybody thinks they can get number 1, talent out of that guy that someone else didn't. So Brian Johnson might say, this isn't ideal, but you know what? I'll figure it out and I'll do it. And it'll lead me to something else. I'm not going to not take the job. And that's where these guys get stuck sometimes, where you dangle, here's the job, It's not ideal, but it's better than what I'm doing. I guess I'll take it. And look, this is a weird situation. I talked about it. I said, has there ever been a candidate who's up for 3 head coaching jobs that ended up only being 2? And he's going to get fired from his team for lack of performance.
Yeah,
I mean, I've never seen such a thing. By the way, 2 points for you, McMullen. Or Jody wasn't here last week, but 2 weeks ago when Jody and I both said Brian Johnson we didn't think would get an interview, he got 2 and then had a third one that got pulled out from him. But somehow he turned into a candidate. So the point is this. The teams around the league, are they saying, we know what was going on over there. That's not this guy's offense. And you guys are missing out on a guy who's a smart coach because you're allowing this coach to make him run his offense.
Yeah, well, I mean, isn't that why you hired Nick Sirianni for his offense? I mean, I gave Jody this quote that Nick told us in the summer of 2022. So I'll give it to you and give your thoughts. No matter if it's Kevin Patullo, and I said, notice who the first name came out of his mouth was. Kevin Patullo is calling it. Shane Steichen's calling it. Brian Johnson is calling it. Jeff Stoutland's calling it. Jason Michael is calling it. Jonathan Gannon comes over and calls it. Howie calls it from up in the box. Jeffrey Lurie, Dom DeSandro, Julian Lurie. I'm very particular. I know what I believe in: the passing, the running game, offensive football. That's what they hired. They hired him, his offense, that's his expertise. If they don't want him now, that's fine, but show the courage of your convictions. That's what I wrote yesterday. To do this smacks to me, it doesn't make sense because you're trying to prove that you didn't make a mistake with Nick Sirianni. What is, if you want to go away from what he does, that means you have to go away from the head coach, not Brian Johnson. That's like the foundation is rotting on the house and you're worried about the lawn.
Well,
that's what that is.
This seems, John, that you're right. They found a guy that came out of nowhere. Nobody had him on the radar anywhere in league circles. They might have knew the guy, but no one had him as a head coach. He got the head coaching job. He exceeded the expectations that anybody could have. He took them to the playoffs the first year after the team won 4 games. He then gets them to the Super Bowl. And at the Super Bowl, these guys are saying, we knew this. You guys all questioned us and made fun of him at the press conference. And then this year turns into what it is. So they want this guy to succeed. The question is, what do they know about his role in why this team has had success? What do they know in that building that we don't know as to, we made the Super Bowl because Nick did this behind closed doors. He got us to the playoffs that first year because we all praised him the first year where the team was 2-5. And then he said, you know what, this isn't working. We're going to lean on the run. They ran themselves to the playoffs that year with a team that was not very talented. And we gave him credit for acknowledging that the team was not working at 2-5. And he said, you guys are right. Let's change it. So what do they know behind closed doors that Nick gets credit for that we're not giving him, that the viewers and everybody out there are saying, why keep this guy? There has to be something that they feel other than, maybe, I hope anyway, other than we're smarter than everybody and we don't want to show people that we made a mistake.
No, I said this in hour number 1. Well, it was still in hour number 1, but first segment of the show. What he's got going for him, he's malleable. He'll change, he'll shift, he'll agree, he'll carry water. We're not changing defensive coordinators. Yeah, you already have. When called upon, he will serve the wishes of the masters, Howie Roseman and Jeff Lurie. I think that's a major attribute that he has in the eyes of his bosses, and enough so that he was able to save his job here. Which
see, and to me, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying that's a bad reason then.
It is. It absolutely is.
Way.
I'm not blessing it by any stretch of the imagination, but that's what I come up with. Motivation, the guys go to war for him. I'm hard pressed to put anything above. He'll go with the flow when he's dictated to by his bosses. If you got better, Mike Gill, please speculate away with
Well,
us.
and that's my thing is I'm saying there might be something behind, we've heard a lot about that they love playing for Nick, and he has everybody's back. He went out and made himself look like a fool for them. To us, we say he looked like a fool. To them, they say, thank you, Nick. That was our bad. Thanks for going out there and not making us look bad. Those things, I guess, matter. The whole offense thing, over time, your offense, if you keep running the same thing, you got to have another layer to it. We hear the comparison all the time.
Yes.
If I said, a lot of people can relate. If you're watching and you have a son who plays baseball and he's 12 years old in Little League and he's blowing everybody away, and then he goes up to the big field and he just keeps throwing fastballs, and the next thing you know, he has no off-speed pitch, and you're like, he's throwing 7 to 8 miles an hour and everybody's hitting him. Yeah, because he only shows one pitch. Over time, he might have been good, but as everybody keeps catching on, you need to have something else. And this offense seemingly was working. Oh, I'm finding out tendencies. I'm seeing more things. I have more on you. And he didn't add anything to it. So at that point, that's where I think you have to say, I want to hire somebody to be my coordinator who I'm going to give him a bunch of plays that is my offense that we like, that work. And I'm going to let him add his stuff into this because we need more pieces to this. I need a changeup. I need a curveball. I can't just keep throwing my heater here. And it seems that he's reluctant maybe to do that.
I want to go back to what Jody said about the offense as a whole. Same offense, pretty much. You have Cam Jurgens coming in for Isaac Sam, a little bit of a downgrade, not massive. DeAndre Swift coming in for Miles Sanders. Miles had a career year. DeAndre had a career year. You and I talked about that a lot. Career years, mainly on the defensive side, was not sustainable. We don't talk about it on the offensive side. The main career year was Jalen Hurts. And guess what? He went backwards. Now, the Honest NFL on Twitter, I know you follow him, used to work for the Eagles, does a tremendous job when it comes to the film. If you want to be a smart Eagles fan, you should follow him at the Honest NFL. This is what he said. The truth is that the flaws in their offensive system were covered up last year for a variety of reasons. Teams didn't know how to invest their resources to defend them. They rarely played from behind and got tested. Their schedule was forgiving, and they had an identity that they played to extremely well. However, the issues they struggled with most this year, the +1 overload pressures, their total lack of a quick passing game, and their lack of middle triangle reads to stress hook droppers all showed up at various points last year too. They're not new problems. There was no evolution to the scheme.
Although the one thing I would push back on a little bit is, yes, he's right about the schedule, but the games they lost this year at the end of the year were against teams that were inferior.
Yes. Well, by that point, the wheels had come off. Certainly, they shouldn't have lost to Arizona. They shouldn't have lost to the Giants.
Listen, John, we came to the realization on Monday's show when you're looking at all this. If you hired an offensive coordinator and he's allowed to run whatever he wants, people will always ask, well, how desirable is this job? Forget the outside factors of Laurie and Roseman, and you might have to run Nick's offense. If I said, Arthur Smith, do you want this job? You're running your offense. He would take it before the words got out of his mouth with the talent on this team. If I said, what do you have to replace on this offense? You would say, nobody. I don't need to replace anybody. Give me the same 11 guys and let's go. So if that's the case, you don't need to replace anybody. You want to run your offense. You like this team. What happened? If you don't want to replace anybody, there's only one answer. Either the coordinator was so inept and such a poor play caller, or the quarterback was the reason the team took the step back. And it's like we want to dance around. He didn't run the same.
Yeah.
His RPO, he didn't make the same decisions. I remember last year, he made the right decision 95% of the time. I'm going to hand it to Sanders. I'm going to pull it from Sanders. I'm going to keep it myself. His lack in the running game is probably the top reason why this offense had the issues. Now, that being said, it was still a top 10 offense. but
yes,
certainly
still a top 10.
clunky.
But my biggest
season.
point to bring up what the honest NFL said was they stunk against the blitz last year. People forget they did the same tired nonsense. Oh, the box says throw it out, bubble screen. But they're winning games. They're successful. Teams spent the offseason trying to decipher what the Eagles were doing. They made adjustments to it, and the Eagles didn't evolve. Now, to me, the only question is that Nick Sirianni? It's not Brian Johnson. That's the ironic part. Or is it Jalen Hurts? And that, to me, is the bigger question. And that's the question they're not answering. So they're putting the Band-Aid on the broken leg. That's what they're doing. Now, you can't move on from Jalen Hurts. You can move on from the head coach. But the one guy that doesn't factor into this equation, to be honest, is Brian Johnson. He doesn't factor into it. They stunk last year against the blitz. Watch the games. They're all available. They stunk. They just won games. They played from the lead. They had an easier schedule. That factored into it. And, teams hadn't evolved to the point where they said, all right, we're going to make adjustments to what they're doing. They weren't good last year.
I'm not buying, John. Sorry. They went 14-3, and that's shame on the rest of the day. If the blitz worked in the first quarter, why didn't they do it in the second? Why didn't they do it in the third? Why did the Eagles keep scoring points in the second quarter? They couldn't have been that bad at it. Otherwise, they wouldn't have had the ability to score all those points. You're telling me every other team in the National Football League stinks and is dysfunctional.
Oh,
they couldn't figure out that the Eagles had flaws.
Well, people think the Eagles won 11 games this year. People think they stunk. They won 11 games. How many teams won 11 games in the NFL? There's a lot of bad organizations, bad teams.
Well, and to further what you said about the honest NFL and the schedule being forgiving, they had more wins this year against playoff teams than any team in the league. Yeah. So this was a non-comparable drop-off. I mean, okay, they weren't good against the blitz last year. They were a play from winning the Super Bowl. Their offense in the Super Bowl, you can make a strong argument, was just as good, if not better, than Kansas City on that day. Hurts just had the fumble, and that really changed the game. Otherwise, he outplayed Mahomes. The offense pretty much had a better day. Statistically speaking, every guy on the field, Brown, Smith, Swift had essentially the same. I mean, the numbers, they ran, I think last year they ran 12 more plays than they ran this year. So it wasn't like, well, last year they ran an extra 200 plays. No, they ran like 1,220.
Yeah, the numbers are eerily similar.
So somebody had to have dropped off. And to me, the one guy's numbers who were way off, there's two guys actually. One is Goddard. His numbers are not the same. They did not use the tight end nearly as much, which would say in the quick passing game, who gets the ball, the tight end is generally that guy. His numbers were way off from last year. And the other guy is Hurts in the run game. His numbers not the same. And to me, that is the big bugaboo from this team in the decision making. You can call the play, but when it got to the line and you have to make that decision, Hurts made the right decision almost every single time a year ago. And this year, it didn't even look the same. It didn't look like hey, I'm going to give it to Swift. I mean, sure, some nights, Tampa Bay, Minnesota, where he really took off and ran and had big nights. But Hurts never had the game. And then even when he did run, he looked clunky. He looked slow. He looked disinterested. He would slide. I don't know why. Is the contract thing? Did they tell him to get down? Did they say we got to run less? Whatever it was, he was not the same.
Mike, I hope that's broached today because it's an outstanding point. It kind of domino effect. If you don't have the Jalen +1 offense, then it affects every other part of your offense thereafter. And I don't know why this one sticks with me, but I remember it like he said it 20 minutes ago. Nick Sirianni after this contract signing. Why would I take his superpower away? Right. Oh, except you did. So I hope that is broached at some point today. All right, one question that I would love to see broached that I don't think is going to happen. you mentioned Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes. If they win this week, Patrick Mahomes will do something no other quarterback ever done in the history of the National Football League. That includes that Brady guy. He'll have gone to 4 out of the last 5 Super Bowls. No quarterback has ever done that before. No quarterback in the history of the NFL has started 4 out of 5 Super Bowls. Mahomes has a chance to do that. Any chance anybody broaches that with Howie Roseman today? Hey, how about your ex-coach there? Andy Reid, he's doing pretty well, isn't he, Howie? No one's going to bring that up to Howie
the Eagles love Andy Reid.
Yeah,
I mean,
we do the show Monday, and I have a co-host on Monday's show, Ryan, and he brought up, they fired Andy. Maybe I said, come on. At that point, I don't think there was anybody. It was just time. I think everybody knew it. I think there's a lot of people like me that said it's time, but I don't think he's a bad coach or anything. So I think the relationship and the Andy winning Super Bowls, I think plays into the question I want to hear, Jody. The number one question that I wanted to hear after the Tampa game. Nick, did the players quit, or were you and your staff that unprepared? They're your only 2 options. Did the players quit, or were you and your staff that unprepared? How would you address that? Because what we saw on Monday night was so unacceptable in a playoff game for a team that it showed, and this is why this is interesting. Nick obviously has a resume of success that they felt comfortable enough with to bring him back. His resume of stink was 6 games, and they deemed that those 6 were not enough. That game on Monday night was so embarrassing. Did your team quit, or were you so unprepared? And if Jeffrey Lurie hears that question, he might rethink the decision he made on Friday.
I don't think he's going to rethink
the ship has sailed.
Yeah. I don't think he's.
No, I'm telling you, that game was so unacceptable the way they came. Because, okay, we look bad.
Well, I agree. I went into that game saying there's no way Nick's going to get fired. No way.
Yeah.
I arrived in Tampa saying no way. I let Tampa go. I went, maybe. I mean, that was that bad of a performance. So I agree with that part of it. But Jeffrey isn't going to rethink. Because he hears that question.
He might not act on it, but he might hear those questions and think, did I make a mistake? Was that Mike Gill right on his 47?
Self-contemplative is never a bad thing. Yeah. Mike Gill, we kept you a long time today. Thank you very much for jumping in. Enjoy your weekend.
Happy birthday. Enjoy the Poconos. Yeah.
Birthday weekend. You don't look a day over 67, so you're hanging in there and you're tough, bud. Appreciate you jumping in with us. We'll talk to you again next week.
I'm not even 50 yet, Jody. Hanging in there.
Old man Gill will be with us next week.
Take care, everybody.
McMullen and McDonald, but he is Old Man Gill today because he just got older on his birthday. All right, Jody Mac coming back. We got another good guest for you. Gill's always good. And Andrew Brandt, former NFL executive, host of the Business of Sports podcast, the head of the law department in Villanova. Very smart football guy is going to join us coming up in just about 20 minutes or so. He's got to jump in a little early and get out a little early too. So Andrew Brandt going to join us in hour number 2 here on Birds 365.
Any professional sports coach will tell you there's no substitution for preparation. At Malamut & Associates, that is a tenet by which we live. We prepare from day one for victory. Anything less is not acceptable.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia Dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Underdog Fantasy has a way for you to play alongside your favorite football team all season long with their fantasy pick'em game. You pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stats, then do what you usually do on a Sunday, watch the games. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, and the Sports Betting Show wants you to get involved. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. When you sign up, use the promo code WIN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
EAGLES, Eagles.
You got Mac and Mac. John McMullen and Jody McDonald here with you on Birds 365. We thank Mike Gill for hopping on. Gill's less than 50. He's a young whippersnapper. If that's the case, I got no idea how old Mike Gill is, but I'll take him at his word. Good for him. Have a nice birthday weekend, Mike, and thanks for jumping in with us here on Birds 365. Let me follow up on one of the questions Mike kind of posed, a statement he made, half a question, about after the game and the loss to the Bucs down in Tampa, that he wants one question and only one question answered. Were the Eagles not prepared, or did the players quit? That's kind of like, here, Nick, here's the gun. You can either shoot yourself under your chin or you can shoot yourself in the side of the head. Please choose one of the two. He's not going to want to do it. I understand what Mike's getting at. It's an answer you should want if you're an Eagle fan, but you got no chance of getting it. If Nick weren't there and Howie were asked that question, how do you think he would answer it? It's not going to be asked. If it is asked, they'll be dismissive of it.
No. Well, that's the thing. And I saw a couple people. The shills won't ask that question. Well, there's a decorum to these things. And what do you want? I mean, nobody's answering that question.
Nope.
No offense to
shot.
Mike.
No chance.
I mean, you have to, and I asked it after the game in a different form. I asked about the tackling, which is about effort. There's some technique and fundamentals, but it looked like guys gave up. And guess what? Nick gave a pretty exhaustive, it might have been his longest answer of the post-game press conference. And you got at least some information out of him. If you ask things in that direction, you're not getting answers. So it might make you feel good and say, oh, so-and-so, and I'm not picking on Mike, so-and-so said, it wasn't embarrassing for you. I mean, right there, they're going to shut down, Jody. Right there.
Agreed.
The goal, our jobs as reporters at these things asking questions is not, and Jeff said this yesterday, or on one of the shows. I think it might have been with Rob Ellis. We're not part of the story. Yeah, we're not looking to shine the light on us. We're trying to get information. What is the best way to get information? That's not the best way.
That's, well, You want the answer. I get it from an Eagle fan perspective. You really want the answer to that question, but you're not going to get it. There are just some things that an organization is not going to do to themselves. They're just not going to put themselves in that position, even though as a fan, you feel that I know there are some Eagle fans that we deserve it. No, you want it. I don't know if you deserve it or not, but you can hope for it. It's not going to happen, even if someone was aggressive. That's one way to describe it. Enough to ask that question. It's not going to bode well for them, and they're not going to answer the question anyway. So why do you even bother doing it? All right, one more Howie question before we're going to try and set up getting Andrew Brandt on. He's going to come out a little early because he's got to get out a little early too. Who fires first? I guess it's Howie, right? Sirianni isn't going to go first.
Yeah, Howie always goes first. Because Howie, I mentioned on yesterday, generally when he does these things, he gives a little bit of an opening statement. I assume he'll want to do that because he'll want to direct things as much as he can. And he'll give up, whatever he wants to give up at the start of the press conference, and then it'll go. So he'll try to steer it. But yeah, he'll go first. And like I said, with an opening statement. And I imagine most of you're going to have typically when they do these things, because Howie and Nick are typically up there together. Typically Howie gets more questions than Nick because we don't get to talk to Howie as much. We get to talk to Nick a bunch. So that's the reason. But in this case, because there's so many issues with the coaching staff and Nick Sirianni, he's going to get plenty of direct questions as well. They'll probably keep him up there for about 30 minutes, I would assume. And that'll be it. But yeah, this is a take your medicine day because it's kind of a embarrassing end to the season for them. And
do you think there's any chance that Nick Sirianni loses his mind today? That because there's going to be some pretty good piling on. There's going to be tough questions, unlike some of our streamers and people on social media. The lemmings will not ask.
Now I'm getting journalists. Everybody's an expert.
Exactly.
Now they know what journalists are supposed to do.
I think you guys.
Same with coaching. I
think you guys do a heck of a job for the most part. Sometimes every once in a while, somebody asks a question, go, wow, really? You asked that question? I'll roll my eyes. But just as a group, kind of like with the Hall of Fame voters yesterday, I thought they did a really good job. There were only 3 guys deserving to get in. Only 3 guys got in. I give you guys the credit for the job you do. It's not an easy job, and I think you specifically, John, but everybody else included, do it as well. Can somebody push just the right button to make Sirianni nuts and have him lose his mind at the press conference?
No, he's improved to the point where, if you think about his opening press conference, and even that was still in the post-COVID era where we were still doing Zoom. I think that was part of the problem. We're so uncomfortable. Jeffrey Lurie, if you remember, talk about opening speeches. Jeffrey Lurie gave a dissertation. He spoke for like 25 minutes. I think he was nervous, waiting for Jeffrey to finish. So that was a little bit. He's gotten much better on the podium. Now this is difficult because he's got to try to spin this in a way where he's got to explain himself, and because there's a lot of contradictions about him and the way he's expressed about his coaching staff and his system, and now he's got to go in a different direction. And like I said, the most important question to me is, Nick, were you dictated to when it comes to this coaching staff, whether it's for firing people, whether it's going to be hiring people? I'm interested to see how he handles that. I think it's a pretty obvious answer. I think it's a pretty obvious thing that he's going to deflect from, but I'm interested to see how he deflects from it.
And it's the first. This is certainly the toughest one he's ever done. We've talked about his opening press conference and the fact that he kind of stumbled through it and didn't have the answer to a huge question of, do you have control of the roster or not? Oh, I don't know. You can't. That was almost as ridiculous as, hey, we were going for a pass interference on the throw downfield against the
that was an indication that he didn't even give a what. It's like, oh, you're giving me a head coaching job? Where do I sign?
Kind of like Doug with his assistant coaches when he got the gig. Oh, go ahead, Howie, you can pick them all. I'm the coach. I'm good with that. You can do everything else. Yeah, this is the first time he's had an adversarial, really adversarial. After games, you're in the moment. You can talk about the game, but this is an overreaching going forward with your job and everything else. It's the first time he's had to deal with pretty adversarial relationship with the media, or at least I hope it is today, because it's not going to be easy for him. It's going to be very interesting. But again, back to the beginning of the show. The useless press conference, or I apologize for not remembering the exact word Twitch Jigga did to describe them. Oh no, it's an important press conference that they're going to have today. All right, he's McMullen. I'm McDonald. That makes it Mac Birds 365. We believe we're going to have Andrew Brandt, former NFL executive, host of the Business of Sports podcast, was part of Packers, Eagles, several teams that went through this, changing coaches, making decisions, keeping head coaches, firing head coaches. This is one of the tougher jobs you have in the NFL. If you've got to be part of this with your job on the line, with you making decisions about other people's livelihoods. It's a very interesting time for an organization to be in. The Eagles are in the midst of it now. Andrew Brandt should be able to give us a keen perspective on it. He's scheduled to join us next here on Birds 365. Hey, let me tell you about Birds fans. Here's your chance to save up to 40% on your car. Is that right? 40% on your car insurance right now with one of JAKIB Sports' great partners. Here's what you need to do. Call managing partner Jim or Fran and tell him you're a friend of JAKIB Sports and Birds 365.
My name is Fran Salerno, and I'm a managing director here at Del Valle Insurance Group. Been in the business for over 36 years, saving people money on their insurance needs. Give us a call. Let us help you custom design an insurance plan that meets both your needs and budget.
Any professional sports coach will tell you there's no substitution for preparation. At McMullen Associates, that is a tenet by which we live. We prepare from day one for victory. Anything less is not acceptable.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Underdog Fantasy has a way for you to play alongside your favorite football team all season long with their fantasy pick'em game. You pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stats, then do what you usually do on a Sunday. Watch the games. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, and the sports betting show wants you to get involved. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. When you sign up, use the promo code WIN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
EAGLES.
Appreciate you streaming in here on Birds 365. You got Mac and Mac and our next guest, who for my money is one of the smartest guys I've ever known around the game of football. Former NFL executive, host of the Business of Sports podcast. And oh, by the way, yeah, he runs the legal arm out there at Villanova, the Moorhead Center, out on the main line. Andrew Brandt, good enough to join us here on Birds 365. Andrew, here's where I want to start with you today. Years that you spent in front offices in the National Football League. Every offseason is unique, and different things need to be done around the team. It seems the Eagles are trying to thread a needle here. They're taking out both of their coordinators, but keeping their head coach in place. His long-term run says he shouldn't even be thought about being fired. His short-term run, one of the biggest collapses in Eagle history. Difficult call to make. How thin a opening are the Eagles trying to thread the needle through? Do you agree with my description of the situation?
Yeah, Jody, good to be with you as always. Jody and John, always enjoy coming on with you guys. This is an interesting front office situation because front office and ownership had to make a decision about a backsliding team, as everybody knows. And how do you look at that short term and long term? Before I answer the specifics, my impressions, guys, on the last half of the season are that there's a lot we don't know. And there are some backstories about this team that somehow, some way have stayed quiet and maybe will come out or maybe not. And there's a lot of rumors about infighting and things like that, but there's got to be more to this. When you see this happen, and other executives around the league are talking about this as well, something's going on back there. Like whether it's coaching, whether it's players, whether it's management, whether it's infighting between players on the same side of the ball, different sides of the ball, between players and coaches, it's not good because you don't have performances that backslide that much without internal discord. It's just part of it. So the question becomes, if you're looking at it from management, how do you solve that? And what this tells me the process has determined is it's not the head coach. Okay. So this has really determined these last 2 weeks and probably before that have determined in the minds of ownership and general manager, it's not the head coach. There are problems, and the problems stem at a deeper level than the head coach. And so they're trying to, as you said, thread the needle that they can fix this around the head coach with players and with coaches. The first will be coaches, and then we'll see players. I think we'll see some player moves out of this that will give us a clue as to what has been the problem this past half of the season.
That's interesting, Andrew, because we've been so focused on the coaching staff for obvious reasons, and we'll get into that as the new league year starts with the personnel aspect, because clearly there was a drop-off defensively. But, you know, there were some at least inklings on the sidelines of guys infighting and certainly being upset in certain situations. From a larger perspective, though, because I want your sort of advice and counsel on this. You know the Eagles well. It's been a while since you've been in the building, but Jeffrey has sort of had that demarcation line of Chip Kelly, and he went from Chip Kelly of holding one guy accountable, giving him the power, to building this collaborative process. And when things are going well, that collaborative process, I think everyone lauds themselves and everybody's involved. But when things are going poorly, I think the unintended consequence of that can be finger pointing And that's not my fault. That's his fault. That's not. And how do you see that as somebody who's spent a long time with Green Bay, which is a very stable organization? Can that be an unintended consequence of getting a bunch of people involved?
Yeah, I mean, I think my experience with NFL teams is trying to prevent what I call silos in the building, where people get, this is the Chip Kelly thing, where you sort of get into different silos. That's our guys, where those are their guys. Usually the silos are between the hardcore football operations and the business operations. So I looked at my role in Green Bay for 10 years was really that bridge, that I was in the middle, right? I was half football, I was half business. So business is much more long-term, how we look in years out, what when the CBA expires, what is our cash and cap outlook in 2026? Football is very immediate. What's going on now? Who can we get on the field now? And that develops silos because you see these operations become very siloed about they don't understand us. They don't know what we need. The bigger problem is silos within the football operation. Meaning there's three parts of the football operation: coaching, personnel, and cap management. And the organizations that do it the best have those three in pretty good harmony, perfect harmony. The organizations that struggle are ones that are not seeing the same picture of those three operations. Having said that, the Eagles have always been one of those harmonious teams with those three areas. Again, coaching, personnel, and cap management. And it helps that Howie has been involved heavily in two of those three. So I don't know what's happening now. It just seems like maybe there was a sense that coaching didn't feel like they had the right players. Personnel didn't feel like the players were coached well. And maybe that's part of this, whereas this kind of silos. You know, I trust Howie in that role to sort of bash heads together and make sure everybody's working the same, because as I mentioned, he's been involved in cap management, been involved in personnel, not the coaching, obviously, but has a big hand in the coaching side too.
All right. So do you have faith in Howie? I'm going to combine two of the things you said about the silos and changes need to be made with the Philadelphia Eagles. They've already started that process by relieving both of their coordinators. Do you have faith in Howie being the guy to determine why Jalen Hurts went backwards this year? There was a drop-off in his production. Nobody could argue that. But the question is why? Is Howie the guy to say, well, it was coaching, what was relationships, was Jalen doing too much work? That year that he had last year, where he was almost the MVP, that's not happening anytime again soon. Is Howie the guy to determine what the hell happened to Jalen Hurts this year?
I think so. I mean, I think that's his role, and to evaluate, which I think has already been done, as to what went on there. This is a couple things, Jody Mac. This is like what I mentioned at the start. Like, there's got to be backstories. Mm-hmm. And I'm not speculating. I'm not going to be quoted on any of this, but like, are we going to find out more about Jalen Hurts? Like, injury-wise, we heard about the hand, we heard about the knee. Was there more to it? Was there something going on? Are we going to hear about more with Jalen Hurts coaching-wise? I don't know. Obviously, the determination was made that Brian Johnson, who's known this guy forever, and his family and everything else, was not the right guy. And he becomes maybe not the only, but a scapegoat for Hurts's downturn in performance.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Jalen Hurts. And I also admire his temperament, which now seems to be getting some criticism that he's not fiery enough, whatever it is. Me personally, I like that in a quarterback.
Okay.
Like flatline. You don't want a quarterback screaming one time, jumping up, you know. You want that quarterback to be flatline. And on another note, I look at Jared Goff's performance in the playoffs. Like, that guy is pure flatline. Mm-hmm. And that's a good thing. So I don't have any problem with Jalen Hurts on the field as a leader, but maybe there's something going on there. But Johnson's been the scapegoat. I mean, if he's not going to be kept around when your franchise he's known since 10th grade or whatever, that's a problem for him, obviously.
Expanding on Brian being out and being the scapegoat, which I agree completely with your thought on what happened there and how the Eagles reacted. I saw something yesterday. I couldn't believe it, Andrew. I had to look it up. There's not a coordinator, offensive coordinator in this league that dates back to 2021.
Wow.
That's where Dave Ragone is he's a lame duck. He was 2020, but they fired Arthur Smith, so he's not coming back. We all know that. You've been out from Green Bay since 08, 09, somewhere around there. How much do you think the league has changed in that short period of time when people are showing no patience? Now, sometimes it's success. Shane Steichen was so good, he got a head coaching job. So sometimes it could be positive, but mainly it's negative. And people just can't stick with coordinators, specifically offensive coordinators. Do you think that's a problem with this league as a whole?
Well, I've been talking about it this past couple of weeks on the head coaching side. We now have 8 of 32. That's a quarter of the league. If that happened every year, it'd be a 4-year turnover of the entire head coaching staff. It's amazing. It's never been like this, John, and I'm trying to come up with reasons. I think the biggest reason is what I talk about every day, what my brand is. The business. The business has gotten so big that no one's patient anymore in terms of ownership. It used to be Jimmy Haslam was the outlier, getting rid of Chudzinski in 1 year, Hugh Jackson 2 years, etc. Now he's kind of the norm. Like you look at David Tepper, you look at all these guys, like, yeah, we're moving on. And it used to be that paying off tens of millions of dollars, think about that number, tens of millions of dollars in fired coaches' fees was a problem. Now it's not. Now with these, pick a number, $6 billion for the latest franchise, $110 billion for media deals, a great CBA. Why not? Why not pay off these $10 million of the head coach, $20 million for a staff, the new coach? It's like no one cares about it. And that triggers down to the coordinators too, of course. And I've been through 2 coaching changes in Green Bay, and it's so hard. People don't realize head coach will be fine. But the lower staff is like, it happens this time of year. Do they put their kids in school here? Do they put their kids in school somewhere else? Do they put their house on the market? Do they not? They're waiting around, like you said about Ragone, John. They know in the heart of hearts they're probably not going to get a job, but they wait around, and it's weeks where they're just scouring the internet. So it's a tough road, and I feel for what's just happened to these coordinators at the Eagles, and people don't appreciate that enough.
Cost of business, swallowing those head coaching stuff. That's a cost of business. And they just go ahead and do it these days. You are 100% right about that. Oh, by the way, they'll probably do about $50 million on average for the upcoming games this weekend. They're doing pretty damn well on the business side, on the TV rating side too. All right, last thing for me, Andrew, and again, thank you very much for jumping in this morning. Eagles are facing a tough day today. Howie's got to have answers. Nick Sirianni's going to have answered. And then they're going to be able to get on with the business of player evaluation and player changes and the like. As we sit here right now, would you rank the Eagles talent roster-wise, knowing free agents and everything else, a top 4 or 5 team, a top 8 team, outside the top 10 with the collapse they had? Where would you put the Eagles talent-wise, knowing how he's got work to do? How much work does he have to do?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. Obviously, I'd say top 5 if you're talking about mid-November.
No, I'm talking January 20, whatever today is.
Yeah, because again, they were winning games earlier this season against good teams that they shouldn't have won. And whether it's Chiefs or Bills or whoever it was, Cowboys' first game, just through some extraordinary talent, that just overwhelmed at times. Position groups, I'm just going to go there. I just think still top 5 on the lines, because the lines are where this team was built and where this sort of identity is. And I still think top 5, even if they lose Kelsey, I still think that'll be a top 5 O line. And even if they lose Cox, I still think it'll be a top 5 D line. So we'll see on the other, on the skill positions, it's top heavy, right? Because you've got Brown and Smith, but you don't have much beyond that. Beyond DeAndre Swift, it just seems like a little top heavy there. And then, of course, they've got to fix the back end on defense. So I guess where that all lands is not top 5 anymore, but certainly I'd say top 10.
By the way,
Howie's so aggressive. You guys know this better than anyone. This roster is going to change.
I know you got to run, Andrew, but I see the Packers helmet on your right shoulder. I want to give you an opportunity. The Packers got it right again with Jordan Love. It is unbelievable. 3 consecutive decades of Hall of Fame quarterback play. I'm not going that far with Jordan Love, but man, how did they do it? What is going on there?
Yeah, tough couple of weeks for me because I'm a huge Packer fan still. I'm also a big Eagles fan. So tough. But the Packers game the other night against what's considered the best team in the conference, they should have won. They should have won. It was heartbreaking as a Packer fan because it was a game they had. Anyway, I don't know the secret. Obviously, I talk about draft a quarterback before you need a quarterback, and the 3-year apprentice period that we had with Aaron, the 3-year apprentice period they had with Jordan. It obviously works. Obviously, there's talent there to begin with, but it works. Can any other franchise do that? No, because obviously, if you take a first-round quarterback and you don't have a Hall of Famer in front of him, you're going to want to get that guy in there.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. But, the Packer way is very simple. I've talked about it since I've left 2009. Draft and develop. No quick fixes. No sexy free agents. And the thing that is hardest for coaches to do, play young players. And you can't be afraid. Every coach wants his security blankets, right? You have to be able to play young players. Trust the scouts. Trust the scouts have gotten you the right players. And, saying goodbye to Aaron Rodgers, imagine doing that after saying goodbye to Brett Favre. It just is something that they're willing to do. And maybe an owner would have held on longer to those guys. So it's all part of the running the Packers, and seems to be a winning formula.
And the evidence was right there before us this year. They got the youngest team in the National Football League. Play the young players. They have stayed true to their motto, and it did pay dividends this year. You always pay dividends when you come on with us, Mr. Brandt. Thank you very much for doing so today. We'll get you back on during the offseason. Thanks, pal.
Look forward to being back. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Andrew Brandt. Check out his podcast, The Business of Sports. One of the smartest guys I know. I've been having Andrew on as a guest for a decade plus.
By the way, even the Packers, Jody, they're moving on from Joe Barry, the defensive coordinator, who had some different. They were poor early in the season, but they kept getting better, leader, and they're moving on. So it's everywhere. It's not just Philadelphia. I mean, and they overachieved. They weren't supposed to make the playoffs. They made the playoffs, and they fought the best team in football, as Andrew said, tooth and nail, had a chance to win the game, and they're still firing coordinators. It's amazing.
Would you consider Barry here for Philadelphia, since there's an opening on the defensive side of the ball?
God, no. He's a Fangio guy. I want out.
You're ready to move on from Fangio.
Here, DBOA, which is an advanced analytical thing. Here are the Fangio defenses this year. Saints 15th. Fangio himself 19th, Staley 26th, Barry 27th, Desai 29th, Gannon 32nd. I don't even know if Jonathan was running that. That's your Fangio defenses.
You don't know if Jonathan was running a Fangio defense? Come on. Of course he was.
No, here's and I didn't watch enough of the Cardinals. I'm just saying. When the Eagles first hired Jonathan Gannon, I assumed we were getting a bunch of Mike Zimmer stuff and Matt Eberflus stuff, which is, not Fangio. That's where he learned. That's who he learned under. And then it came out that this is the philosophy that Nick wanted to run defensively because he felt it was the most difficult to deal with. A lot of offensive coaches felt that way. Sean McVay felt that way. That's why that's why he got rid of Wade Phillips, who's one of the great defensive coordinators all time, and brought in Brandon Staley. People have caught up. People have caught up. I don't want any part of it. But from the Packers' perspective, I just bring that up because they overachieved by every instance. They overachieved, and they are a very stable organization, and they still fired them.
Very true. And you quoted DVOA, and that's it's a very good stat. I certainly look at it, and I understand the way that it works in evaluating other numbers, how it plays into other numbers, and how you judge teams off it. That goes back to my whole woe is Brian Johnson thing. The Eagles went from DVOA on offense from 3rd to 10th. Now you're top 10. They weren't expected to be top 10. They were expected to be top 1, top 2, top 3. Now, why would they get worse when they've got all the guys coming back, most of which were still in a progressive age that they should get better, not go backwards? Jason Kelsey is just like inexplicable that he just keeps getting older, just keeps getting better. Nobody can explain that. But all the other guys, Mailata should have gotten a year better, not a year older. Dickerson should have gotten a year better, not a year older. DeAndre Smith, Devontae Smith should have gotten a year older, not a year better, not a year older. And they went from 3rd to 10th. And the only change on the offense was Brian Johnson. So I don't know why everybody's up in arms. How did they do this to Brian Johnson? It's so unfair. No, it wasn't. He didn't do a good job. The offense went backwards. And the play calling was his responsibility.
Yeah, but that's where you and I disagree, because things don't stay in a stasis. I say it all the time. It's not a vacuum. It's not stagnant. People adjusted to what the Eagles did. Now, you can point out that why didn't they do it last year? Everyone says the NFL's a copycat league. It is, but it's a very slow-moving copycat league. So, number one, you got to get to the off season. That's what these defensive coordinators do. They spend their entire freaking off season trying to look at, all right, who do we have to beat if we're the Dallas Cowboys, the Washington Commanders, the New York Giants specifically, but anybody who had the Eagles on their schedule. We got to play the Eagles. They're the top team in the NFC. They're the top of the mountain. They're who you have to knock off. They're so successful. How do you do it? So you adjust. And the Eagles played the same stinking offense. No evolution. Now, if you want to blame Brian for that, that's fine. You can, because he's part of that. There's no evolution. It's very stagnant. They're staying behind the curve. And we talked to Jeff McMullen yesterday. He had that interview where Nick said it's not about doing different things. It's about what you do, doing it better.
Doing it better. Right.
They didn't evolve. And they need to evolve, and they need more creativity. And creativity isn't motion. People say, well, you got to have some motion. Well, yeah, they're 32nd in motion. They should be using more motion. I think everybody can agree with that. But it's not because you send a couple guys in motion, you're going to get better. You have to evolve what you're doing system and scheme-wise, and that's Nick Sirianni. If you want to blame everybody, blame Nick, Kevin Patullo, Brian Johnson. But I'm saying, if you're blaming Brian Johnson, you have to blame Nick Sirianni. That's what I'm saying. Can't be one. You got to blame them both, which I'm fine with. But to single out the less important of the two doesn't make sense to me.
No,
that's just assigning blame because you don't want to, in Jeffrey Lurie's case, in my opinion, that's assigning blame to an underling because you don't want to admit a bigger mistake. And that to me doesn't make sense.
Here's where, you and I split on this. And I just don't have a problem with it. The world, life is a meritocracy. And you earn what you've earned. And you are judged by what you've earned. And Nick Sirianni was the head coach of a team that went to the Super Bowl and was tied with 3 seconds to play. Brian Johnson was the quarterback coach of said team and how much influence he had, certainly not going to compare to the head coach. You give him some credit. It's not like he just stood there and go Jalen, go Jalen. No, he gets credit for partial credit for the year that Jalen had, but given more hands-on for Jalen Hurts, the quarterback went backwards badly. That's where I think Jeff Lurie drew the line, Howie Roseman drew the line. Howie had some cred in the bank because he was the head coach of a team that went to the Super Bowl. Brian Johnson didn't have that. Brian Johnson stepped up into a more important position, and that aspect of the team went backwards badly. And do I think?
Well, I agree. It's not, it's a meritocracy. You and I are not going to disagree on that. And the Eagles are not alone. I just meant that the Packers technically overachieved, and they're still firing people. So, expectations play into it, no question about it. In this team, I said it pretty much from day one. The expectations were out of whack. You and I can go back and you heard, it's not going to be a big deal. Moving on from Shane Steichen, it's not going to be a big deal. How many fans said that? Now they say
not McMullen and McDonald.
No, exactly. Moving on from Jonathan Gannon was going to be, they were going to get better because Jonathan Gannon was so bad.
Not McMullen and McDonald.
Exactly. So, it's not, they made it to the Super Bowl. And I think everyone said, well, they made it to the Super Bowl. It's not stagnant. You lose coordinators. You lose 5 defensive starters. You lose all these guys. You had so many career years. Guess what? Jalen Hurts had a career year. He did not have a career year this year. All the defensive players that had career years. Mike Gill mentioned Dallas Goedert inexplicably went backwards. For what, again, Isaac Seumalo was better than Cam Jurgens. Was he that much better? Maybe not. Miles Sanders was better than DeAndre Swift. Was he that much better? No, but he was better. Little increments. Jordan Mailata, you mentioned the offensive line. The only one of the 5 who had a better year this year than last year was Jordan Mailata. Everybody else went back. Not a lot, but went back. Even Kelsey, Lane, Landon, they didn't play as well this year. Are we going to blame Jeff Stoutland for that? Some people could. I'm not. I mean, a lot of that is age with Jason and Lane and maybe expectations. But Landon, he should have gotten better. He didn't get better. He didn't get a ton, but he'd be the first one to admit it. He didn't have the year he wanted to have. Now, I think Jordan was tremendous. Cam Jurgens is playing out of position. I give him a little bit of a dissertation, but dispensation. Yeah, I mean, we didn't bring up the career year aspect of how many guys had career years. And by the way, if Kaiser White was back and Marcus Epps was back and CJ was back and healthy, they might have not performed up to the level they did last season because they had never performed at that level. So that factors into it as well.
Oh, and despite the fear of sounding like an overreactive Eagle fan, like you just described them with the changes they had to make going into this year, I'll go on record right here, right now. I think the offense will be better next year. I don't even know who their offensive coordinator is. I think because, as you just pointed out, things go up and down, and the Eagles were due to come down a little bit. Well, guess what? They're due to go back up again next year. And despite the fact that Sirianni isn't on the strongest of footing going into the year, and we'll find out a lot today. You get a text yet? You know what time you're heading over to the?
No, not yet.
Why would you need to know that, John? You're only planning your entire day around that.
I know what I have to be there, but they have not made it official. I think they have not made it official because they want to limit the crowd, to be honest.
And I don't know what time they're going to talk. I know this is an important news conference. I don't know what they're going to hire as an NFL, their offense coordinator next year. I'm just on record as saying I think they will be a better football team next year because they'll have a better offensive coordinator. I don't even know who they're hiring, and I believe he'll be better than Brian Johnson. So I'm going to project, an improved Eagle offense. Now, this could all go to spit depending on how he handles the player personnel.
I'm gonna predict they have a better defensive coordinator. It's going to be hard to be worse than they were this year. Offense, there's so many. That's up in the air because it's got more to do with Sirianni than it has to do with Brian Johnson. So to me, it has nothing to do with Brian Johnson. It has to do with Nick Sirianni.
Yeah, you and I disagree on that. I think Brian Johnson did a poor job this year. And I don't think he was, to use the word you use often, scapegoated at all. I think he deserved to lose his job. And I think the Eagles... And I reserve the right to change my mind if they pick Clint Kingsbury as their guy. Not a fan. But I think cooler heads will prevail and they'll come up with some kind of compromise.
What about Jim Bob? Jim Bob's not.
Jim Bob, I'd be good with. Right. Frank Reich, I'd absolutely be good with. Couple other guys.
Mike McCoy. How about a Mike McCoy?
You know, I'm okay with Howie wanting to see the offense slant a little bit differently. And how, when I say Howie, of course, I mean Howie and Jeffrey. Just not so drastic. Kingsbury's offense is drastically different than what Nick
whatever they do, they got to get the quarterback back going in the right direction. So who's ever the quarterback coach, whoever is the offensive coordinator, it's about getting Jalen Hurts back to where he was previously.
Last thing, I think I mentioned him to you yesterday. I'd actually like to see a KK offensive coordinator, but not Cliff Kingsbury. I like Clint Kubiak.
Clint Kubiak, boy.
And I know that's kind of a Shanahan move, and you're a Shanahan guy.
Right. And this is not a Shanahan quarterback, so be careful for what you wish for. Because, yeah, Clint Kubiak, Gary Kubiak's son, same thing, play action, under center. I don't think Jalen Hurts is that type of quarterback.
But could they teach him to be it?
I don't think it's a strength. Why would you want to? I'm a big maximize the strengths of the players you have. And that's what I think was part of Nick Sirianni's success and the dichotomy of Nick Sirianni. I don't know if I know I told it on, I probably told it on here, but he always brings up Larry Karras, his old Mount Union coach, when he was going back there to get a job and he was doing an interview and he asked him his offensive thoughts. And he stopped him. Larry Karras stopped him and said, "You don't even know who the freaking players are. Stop talking about schemes and systems. You build around the players you have." That's ironic to me for two reasons. One, it's tremendous advice. Nick seems to have taken it on the offensive side of the football. Defensively, he was the exact opposite. I want to play this scheme. I want to chase this scheme. When I lose my coordinator, I want to go out and find somebody who plays this scheme. So one, he contradicts himself on the other side of the ball. I have a problem with that. That's offensively, fair. Though, he did that with Jalen Hurts. Early, he tried to run more of a not a Kubiak Shanahan scheme, but more of a traditional NFL. What he did in Indianapolis with Phillip Rivers. He tried to run more of that, and it wasn't to the strengths of the court. And he changed, and I give him, to this day, give him tremendous credit for that. I don't think it's a strength. I always say, Kirk Cousins, Josh Dobbs, Kevin O'Connell didn't change. You got to change. They're two completely different players. Kirk Cousins is if you want to play action under center, as long as you can pass protect, that guy's going to get people the football. Josh Dobbs, they're trying to run him under center. It was a freaking disaster. Now, Jalen's a hell of a lot better than Josh Dobbs. I'm not comparing him as players, but I'm comparing the point of take advantage of the player's strengths. And if you have to change, you have to change.
Yeah, see, maybe I'm just like the Philadelphia Eagles, the way I described it to Andrew Brandt. I think they're trying to thread the needle. They're trying to assign blame for this collapse, but they don't want to take the coach's head off. So they're trying to thread the needle by taking off the offensive and defensive coordinators' heads. maybe that's what I'm trying to do with Jalen Hurts too. Do I want Jalen Hurts to become Kirk Cousins? No, I do not. That would be foolish. But do I want to just turn everything in my offense to what is a strength of Jalen Hurts? The quarterback's got to have a little give too. You got to work with me here. Well, I want the all-encompassing offense, under center, out of the gun, running the ball, throwing it 45 times. I guess I'm greedy here and I want it all. And the way you're describing it is, no, they're going to do what Jalen does best. And that's how they're going to build the offense. And Jalen gets to basically dictate by his strengths and skills as to what the offense is. No, I want a little bit more varying offense, and I want him to be able to do more stuff. So it'll be very interesting to see how it shakes out. We may get at least our first glimpse at it in the afternoon press conference with Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni. Don't know if we will. We know it's going to happen. Don't know how many answers are going to be forthcoming. But we'll come back and put a bow on the show and talk about just that here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
They're carving them up and good play calling along the way. First and goal at the 6.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy has a way for you to play alongside your favorite football team all season long with their fantasy pick'em game. You pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stats, then do what you usually do on a Sunday, watch the games. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, and the Sports Betting Show wants you to get involved. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. When you sign up, use the promo code WIN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News?
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Final couple minutes on a Wednesday edition of Birds 365. We thank both Andrew Brandt and Mike Gill, two good guests today. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to it. If you're just jumping in now, catch the tail end, go back. It's on YouTube. You can go back and watch anything you want. It's there forever. So go back and check out both Mike and Andrew. They're both very good with us today. All right, last thing, Johnny Mac, and it'll be an interesting show. It's going to be so intrigued with what Howie and Nick Sirianni have to say today, and you guys' questions you'll be posing to them. A guy who I don't think is going to be part of the conversation for an Eagle coordinator position. I hope he is, but I'm doubting it highly. And, we should try and get on this week because please correct me if I'm wrong here. I think Marcus Hayes was the guy who talked about Denard Wilson when he was up for the coordinator job. They chose to go in a different direction.
Marcus, yeah.
I think he had a good relationship with Denard. And at least according to Marcus, Denard volunteered to stay as the DB coach. And Nick said, yeah, that's not going to be a good idea. If I don't make it a coordinator, there are going to be bad feelings and everything. I think we should part ways and go our own separate directions going forward, which was a mistake by Sirianni in my eyes, if that's exactly the way it went down. Is there any way they could mend those fences and bring Wilson back as the DC?
I don't. Maybe they can mend the fences, but I don't think it's even on the agenda for two reasons. One, they don't want to highlight, oh boy, we made this terrible mistake.
Yeah, but if you correct your mistake, you correct your mistake.
Well, the second part is I don't think they want to go with a first-time defensive coordinator again. And by the way, Sean Desai wasn't even a first-time DV. He was a first-year defensive coordinator. But he only did it for 1 year. Didn't have a ton of experience. My point is I think they want somebody with more experience, especially on that side of the football, because it is, the right hand of Nick Sirianni, so to speak, is offense. The defense that's not his expertise. So they want more of it. What Jim Schwartz, when he was here, a head coach of the defense, is, I think, the way they want to go. And not that Denard maybe can do it, but he's never done it before. And I don't think they want to be in a position where somebody with no experience being a coordinator is thrust into that position again.
But he's got a leg up on everybody else who's going to be applying for this job. He's been here. And I know there's massive roster turnover in the NFL. He's only been gone 11 months, whatever it is. He still knows a lot of the guys who are going to be part of the defense, a lot of the guys who are going to have to be keys. He's coached or been a coach of their team, not necessarily position.
Yeah, that too, offensively. Jeff mentioned that word yesterday. I think he's right, Jeff McClain. Because I mentioned Glenn Schumann because of the familiarity with all the Georgia guys. And he kind of poo-pooed that. He used the term uncomfortable. I don't think they want that comfort. Jalen Hurts, I thought that was a good point by him. Jalen Hurts and Brian Johnson, they were too close. The Georgia guys, maybe they're too close. Maybe need a little bit more comfortability in that building. Sure. So that's part of it as well, I think, but we'll see.
Someone brighter than me once said familiarity breeds contempt. I guess that's what they're did they know about Brian Johnson and Jalen Hurts when they made that quote? Perhaps
they did. Certainly did. Well, they certainly, that's I if we're up to Nick, it'd probably be Kevin Patullo, but they were in fear of losing Brian Johnson, rightfully so, because he probably would have left to be a coordinator elsewhere. And that's why they promoted him. And now, it's another thing. Very press tailors in the fact they spent 3 years lauding this guy, and all of a sudden he's a moron. And I look at the Eagles and I go, which one is it? It can't be both. Can't be both.
We'll see how it shakes out today. Johnny Mac, have a good time over at the press conference. You and I will be right back here on Birds 365 and 2 and 2. Tomorrow's much watch streaming.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate, inside the locker room, and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.